What are you expecting to hear from the president later this afternoon?
Well, from the business groups and the Joint Foreign Chamber, we've actually published a wish list, if you will. There's like over 20 items, but prominent among those would be items like open access for data transmission, freedom of information, uh, liberalization of foreign equity, and regulating the holidays, and even more importantly, the establishment of regulatory agencies for shipping, maritime, and the airports. And all of these kind of lend towards the concerns specifically of the electronics industry in terms of our high operating costs. For instance, for labor, there's a lot of holidays basically render the cost of labor higher than our ASEAN neighbors. And of course, we know about the high logistics cost. That's why we're appealing to have like regulatory agencies for that. And the power cost. We're not very competitive, 40% higher compared to our ASEAN neighbors. And I think part of what we'd like to see also is a reasonable Philippine energy development plan that only not reduces the operating cost, but also switch over to renewable energy. And of course, the other big concern would be in terms of the incentives rationalization of CREATE. I've mentioned in our previous interview that we have observed about $3.2 billion of capital flight, and we're hoping the situation doesn't get worse. And of course, a big reason for that would be the concerns about incentives, which, as you know, is much more generous when compared to our, well, we're at a disadvantage compared to our ASEAN neighbors. They have more generous incentives. And the other part of that is perhaps the consideration of a hybrid or flexible work schedule. I guess we know it as work from home, but globally the practice really is for hybrid and flexible work schedules. And last but not least, the promotion of the ease of doing business, more teeth into it, and especially in reducing corruption and reducing the processes and the data automation among the government agencies. So those would be the big ticket items that we'd like to hear the president address.
All right, quite a number of items there, 24 to be exact, priority legislations that the business community is pushing for. Let's zero in on some of those, particularly here on the review of CREATE. How hopeful are you, though, that this time around you have lawmakers and even the cabinet are really going to take a second look at the incentives rationalization, considering that majority, at least, of the economic team are also holdovers from past administrations?
Well, we're still looking forward to that because I believe that the economic team, it's much more proactive and objective. And I think what we need to do is look at the data, look at the facts in front of us. While we can say that FDIs for the Philippines in 2021 was 50% higher compared to 2020, the reality is we're laggards compared to our ASEAN neighbors. So we need to look at the facts, we need to understand why, and implement the appropriate corrective actions. I mean, unfortunately, Senate and DOF and NEDA didn't listen to us. And when we say that even with the 10-year transition period, it's not good enough because especially for our industry, where we rely on new products and technologies, not much is coming to the Philippines today. And if we keep on running this, what we call legacy products, which will be obsoleted, because the new ones are really going to our ASEAN neighbors like Vietnam and Thailand and Malaysia, then our electronics industry will basically die a slow death, right? Not immediately, but over time, it's not going to be. I mean, we reached a $45.9 billion level last year at about 400,000 direct employees and 2.6 indirect. We're not going to see that sustained over the years if we don't take a serious look at the incentives.
Now, earlier also, you mentioned how in the past interviews you've discussed this capital flight, if I'm not correct, around $3.2 billion. Is that correct, Sir Dan?
Correct.
Okay. So do we have any updates on those? I mean, are there other potential investments that we are losing out on?
Well, as I've mentioned also in the past, in addition to the 3.2 billion, there's another 400 million at risk. And those are the ones that we know of. But obviously, like I said, because of the incentives that hardly compensate for the high operating cost in the Philippines, then we're not seeing significant. There are some, I must say that, but we're not seeing significant investments in new products and new technologies here in the Philippines.
And then, new Congress is likely to revive talks as well on the ratification of our membership to RCEP. How crucial is it for Congress to work on that ASAP? And how will this change the export market? You have a previous UN study at least saying that, gains are tilting more heavily towards imports, upsetting balance of trade. How do you expect that to affect as well the export environment?
Well, RCEP is favorable to us because what happens is, as you know, we have countries that compete with the supply of electronics products, right? And if we are not part of RCEP, then basically, at least compared to those countries who are participating in RCEP, then inherently our exports with the tariff and everything will be more expensive than those countries that have signed up for RCEP.
Well, what can you say? What's your assessment so far in the first month of President Ferdinand Marcos Jr.?
Well, I think it's too early to say because there are a lot of challenges that are facing the president. So, what we can say though is the industry and well, the other industries for that matter are behind the president, supporting his initiatives, and that we will work together with government to try to resolve the issues confronting us in the global market. But we do hope and we look forward to that we have a listening ear and the president act on the appeal and the recommendations of the private sector, and the Joint Foreign Chamber for that matter.